I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. Thomas Jefferson. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Full Metal Cast, and happy Thanksgiving. As I'm filming this, I just got out of my gym's turkey burn, the strength and conditioning class that we run the morning of Thanksgiving. I am still recovering from a good night out last night as well, but hopefully you guys are all spending today with friends, family, those who mean the most to you, and maybe not fighting over politics as much over the dinner table, just enjoying the company of others and some good food. And if you are the casual enjoyer of football, hopefully your teams win. Anyways, so I wanted to record this, and I know I missed last week's episode, but I wanted to record this because I had some thoughts kind of going through my brain about more current events. Obviously, this is a podcast. That's the entire purpose of it. But it was in context of the quote for this episode from Thomas Jefferson. I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. And the latter part of that quote, the oxymoronic nature of it, peaceful slavery is what stuck out to me and what probably sticks out to everyone in the community as well. I feel as though, despite how stupid it sounds to us who are well aware that peaceful slavery could never exist, it is simply a false promise, a false god. We have given it a shot, though, however. We have said, peace, wow, that sounds really great. What do we have to give up just to maintain peace, to live a comfortable life? And we've given up quite a lot of freedoms. We have given up a lot of the things that make us who we are, a lot of the things that make us happy, a lot of the things that give us purpose, all in the name of this peace, this comfort that was promised with it. And if you look outside of our borders, obviously there are two very large conflicts going on, and other conflicts as well you never hear about, that we are playing a very large part in and are funding. We are the primary funders of a lot of these conflicts, and yes, that is your tax dollars at work. I don't think anyone voted on that, but that's a topic for a different episode, I suppose. You can bring it within the borders, though, and you can look at what happened on the New York subway twice now. Two very high-level cases where self-defense was not allowed, was not permitted. I don't think I stand alone when I say that private citizens shouldn't have to expect to be targeted or victimized whenever using public transit. And if a state such as New York is so committed to going green and getting rid of internal combustion engines and vehicles by X date, you'd think they'd make their primary public transport somewhat safe and habitable by people who actually want to use it instead of living in it or preying upon others inside of it. A civilian shouldn't have to be an MMA fighter, shouldn't have to be trained in jiu-jitsu to ride the train. Even if they are, doesn't matter, they're still going to get charged if enough people who are terminally online scream about it. The second most recent, and honestly, this most recent example is pretty interesting, actually. I'll admit I haven't done a lot of research about the names of the individuals involved, what weapon was involved, but from the snapshots, it looks like my guy whipped out the big iron in the subway and fired warning shots. And I want to go on record and say, warning shots don't exist, they're not a thing. That bullet's going to go somewhere, and you are accountable for that round. So I get that being a no-no. However, I also sympathize with the guy to a degree. What the fuck else is he supposed to do? He sees someone getting assaulted, and is he supposed to put himself on the line? Surely he does not want to harm the animal that is hurting somebody else, who's violating someone else's natural rights, so he won't shoot them, nor does he want to get physically involved and put his body on the line, and so he fires a warning shot. Again, that in and of itself is a no-no, but I can play devil's advocate a little bit because I can see the mental gymnastics this poor individual had to go to while watching somebody on the New York City public transit get assaulted, get victimized, get preyed on. And that's ridiculous. Another example, which we've gone over, several times about the laws, about how mass shootings are illegal, and more keep coming out about some of the manifestos regarding some of the mass shootings. The trans shooter in Nashville, the shooter that shot up the bank, I believe, I forget which state that's in, it's escaping me now. All these mass shootings, these school shootings, they're illegal in and of themselves, and the people who had the guns are mentally unfit and likely should not have had them in the first place, and no law ever created, no government agency that's ever existed could ever prevent such things from happening. However, we bow to these, we give up so many things, all for this false promise of safety, and it fails to get delivered time and time again. It doesn't matter, inside or outside of this country, the world that we live in, truly the world that we live in, not just the country that we live in, has become a less safer place. And the other example that I'm now just remembering, the California homeowner who had a couple guys jump over his fence onto his property and assaulted him right on his front door when he was bringing coffee back home in the morning. He was a concealed pistol holder, he had a license in the state, which I can't imagine how much of a pain in the ass that was to get. But he had it. He drew on them as they literally made contact with him at his front door with his family inside. He did fire some rounds. And then we found out just recently that he had his permit revoked. It was taken away. And allegedly it came after a verbal altercation that was driven by the man. I think the homeowner's displeasure about how the investigation was being handled. And again, I can get probably the displeasure because I would imagine that because he followed the rules, he had a permit, he called in the shooting, he called in the incident, he probably cooperated as much as he could. Because he basically delivered himself on a platter, the state decided to probably make him the criminal in the investigation, the primary subject of the investigation, rather than the individuals who were trying to kill, rob, whatever, him and his family at his own home. So yeah, I'm going to assume here that that's exactly what probably happened. And after said verbal altercation, the sheriff took away his concealed carry permit. Wild. And then I think we talked about it earlier on another episode, but like the FBI looking at the January 6th member who used pepper spray. Pepper spray. This wasn't like some crazy violent individual who was harming others, who was shooting at others, who even had like a real weapon at the rally. We have the FBI playing army out in the woods looking for this guy, while we have actual murderers and actual mentally disturbed people planning mass shootings that the FBI is aware of, but they cannot locate because they're out doing little silly shit like this. Again, this peaceful slavery, this serving to every single rule, regulation, order, mandates without any sort of recourse, without any sort of pushback, all for the promise of some semblance of peace and safety and what's minimal to survive as a human being in this world. It's not working. It could never work again. Peaceful slavery is an oxymoron. There's not a single example of it ever working throughout history, and we would literally be insane to believe that we could pull it off here. But I get it. It sounds good. It sounds like it exists for good, and it sounds, not that far out of reach. But just like any other Marxist or critical ideology, climate, gender, race, theory, whatever you want to use, it all exists for good, it says. It's all this grand, fantastical promise, but none of the means that they plan, none of the means that are brought forth, or suggested to bring about the ends of the theories, they just simply aren't compatible. They could never achieve what they set out to achieve. It just is a false promise. And I think constantly we hear that the U.S. is in downfall, being compared to the fall of Rome. We're all obsessed with gender, what's between our legs and all this stuff. The real warriors are gone. We are kind of, captivated by the circus, in front of us with sports, with made-up celebrities that seem to just come out of thin air every week. And it's kind of hard to argue against that, unfortunately. We've ignored science, common sense, and history for that matter, all for comfort and decadence. Violence goes unchecked for those living outside the law, like the guys in California who assaulted the homeowner. While those who live within the confines of the state's, regulations have simply been preyed upon, and we have no possible way to reasonably protect ourselves. And I think further to go back to the, the circus and the fall of Rome, dancing teens on TikTok, pornography, and submissiveness are hailed as empowering, and, all the while our government representatives. This mask is actually really fucking pissing me off. Now it's not staying up. I don't know how I got stretched out, but our government representatives avoid paying taxes and participate in insider trading and wage wars for their own financial benefit to manipulate stock prices. And oh yeah, at the same time, this peaceful slavery promise, you're making the world entirely less safe for all of us. We're beaten, robbed, killed, raped, whatever, in the subway, and yet we're not allowed to defend ourselves in any matter, and our taxes are nothing but income streams for public servants, and they don't do anything to better our communities. We're simply slaves to anyone who decides to prey on us, and our votes matter. They don't matter at all when it comes to regulations, as different government agencies suddenly kind of come out of thin air and are able to materialize their own fucking rules if you look at the ATF. But this is what we bought for comfort, though. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how we were able to be tricked or duped, or how we slid into this rut of, going all in on peaceful slavery at, whatever cost it takes. But this is it. This is peaceful slavery. And this isn't even its final form, I guess, for lack of a better term. It can and will be so much worse if we continue to let it go the way that it goes. Staying immersed in our literally aimless entertainment and doing whatever we can to live that stupid fucking life where food can get delivered to the door. DoorDash still works, Netflix still works, but yeah, we'll pay whatever we have to in taxes. We may get beaten and raped on the subway, but that's fine. At least the world's peaceful. It doesn't fucking work like that. And that whole superlative, that oxymoron, peaceful slavery, it now stings the ear, so bad. And I'm a Jefferson guy, I'll admit. Obviously, I have a quote that is tattooed on my leg. But I like how it's used, how stupid, peaceful slavery sounds, but I love how it's used to emphasize how critical freedom is, even if it might be dangerous at sometimes. That's like nature, though. Nature's beautiful, it's pure, it's completely objective, and it's going to be dangerous at times. Nature's violent. Animals have to eat, there's predators, there's prey, but it's completely free. It is simply as God intended it to be. And there's nothing fucking with it, there's nothing interfering with it and making it, this controlled little fucking sphere where only a few people can dictate, what animals eat what animals can go where, what animals can be with other animals. And the only actually that does exist, people exist in nature like that as well. And just like government exists in our lives, that's how things sort of get twisted and, contorted. But I know, back to my point, I said there's been never such a thing as peaceful slavery. The adjective is simply incompatible with the noun, I like to think. And we are so risk averse as human beings, and maybe that's the reason why we've slipped into this peaceful slavery thing. We may have done the very poor mental math, I will admit, to say this makes the most sense to avoid, conflict, war, harm, perceivably, in the long run, that this is what we'll do. We'll give up little bit by little bit by little bit to be able to stay in our warm homes, or cool homes, depending on where you live, to be able to have food delivered, to be able to get toilet paper, off the grocery shelf, to have Alexa integrated in our cars, to make sure the Wi-Fi is fast so we can play our video games and watch Twitch streamers and OnlyFans girls. I don't, and I think I've said this many times, is that like many things, people wake up when it's simply too late. When the barbarians are at the door, I know that's an example that's used way too often, but when things have gotten so bad, when you are then finally the victim on the subway, when you are then finally the victim walking on the street by some homeless man or this immigrant that was bussed in, this military-aged male immigrant, was bussed in over the border simply for votes, and truly not your votes or your benefit. And why do I bring this up now? I guess I can start to wrap this up. It's a shorter episode. Hopefully you guys are all shopping on Black Friday or Cyber Monday, being good little Americans and listening to this. Or if you're truly being a good American, you're saving your money, you're working out, you're working on yourself because material things don't matter. Tying into peaceful slavery, I guess, here. Don't be a slave to your belongings, to your desires. Some stoicism for you there as well, I guess. But I bring this up now on Thanksgiving because obviously the cliche is everyone's got something to be thankful for. Well, I am still very much thankful for the dangerous freedoms that I have left. I can still do many things, and obviously they're all limited somewhat by the state. So I won't list them all, but obviously the primary ones, buying guns, I can still buy whatever car I want. I can choose to go wherever I want during my day. I don't need permission to do that. I am able to freely spend my money when and where and however I want for the most part. Huge asterisk there. Taxes. But those things, those dangerous freedoms that we have left have only eroded over time. Obviously, you can't purchase certain firearms without a seriously convoluted and long and bureaucratic process. And paying more taxes. Some of you just can't get it all, period. Certain cars are being banned soon here as well. And also an interesting thing, not allowing cars to go over 100 miles an hour, and also the government's ability to shut down cars automatically, for all new models at some point in the future. Terrifying shit. And also in the context of what just happened at the border of, New York and Canada, the car that drove through the inspection booth by Niagara Falls. Still not sure what happened there. There's a lot of stories going around, but it seems to be just like a freak accident of a car just missiling through the border checkpoint, which crazy. But I can see that being used as a means to push for controlling speed limits in cars and being able to shut down cars automatically. So for that, I'm sure. Social, currency, social credit, that's coming as well, too. We want to move away from physical, currency and go to this complete digital currency. And we've seen how well that works in China. Doesn't work, but we don't care. It doesn't happen here, so we cannot possibly perceive the horrors that it'll bring about. But even in Canada, we saw bank accounts frozen for people simply exercising their right to protest, to gather, to assemble peacefully, to speak their fucking minds. They froze accounts, they seized assets. And PayPal, by the way, a private company, already threatened to fucking do that for any firearm purchases or anyone linked to spreading mis or disinformation, however they fucking judge that. So I'm thankful for the dangerous freedoms that I have left in the year 2023. I'm thankful for a lot of the friends. I'm thankful for all my friends and family, obviously, but some new friends and maybe newly discovered family who are more aware of what's going on in the world and have turned back to valuing their own worth, their own individual rights, their own natural God-given rights, and realizing that those are the most important things that matter. They will make you human, and preserving and protecting and looking to expand them is the greatest purpose and the greatest calling in life. Doing it virtually, asterisk there. You got to do it virtually. You can be an absolute tyrant, asshole, killing, shooting, looting, doing whatever, all in the name of, expanding your own rights and, feeling free and all this stuff. But living virtually, still recovering from last night, virtuously, in an age of absolute insanity and madness, is the greatest purpose anyone can do. And I'm very thankful to have found a decent community of guys locally and some family members who have recently started, pushing for the same things that I've been pushing for. And I enjoy the little things as well in this life. The beauty of nature. Obviously, I've been getting blinded by the sun here on a very uncharacteristically sunny fall day this Thanksgiving. I'm thankful I am thankful for this country, and that's tough for me to say, because while it is ran by absolute assholes and people who aren't even fit to run a lemonade stand, the country is very different than the government. And that's sort of the distinction that's being made a lot with like religion and God. A lot of people have turned their backs to the church because the church has turned their backs on us, or so we feel. I am one of the few members who was born and raised Catholic, believe in God and all that, but have found that as I've gone to church, as I have seen headlines, as I have observed and listened to teachings and preachings of priests and other figures in the church, it has very clear that the church falls a little short and does us a great disservice when it comes to not being tyrannized, not being forced on our knees by a false god. And that's just one of the many things. I also think that the church falls a little short in recognizing natural rights with a very broad stroke. Just going to throw that out there. I think that's going to get a little hairy, so I won't dive too much into that. But I do believe in God. I have my own relationship with God. I have fallen a little bit out of touch with the church, but that is sort of the example I'm providing to say, well, I'm thankful for this country. Obviously, I'm not thankful for the government. The government can all jump. They can all hang, and we'd be better off. But I'm proud of this country's history. I'm proud to, proud to be here. I think that, while it is crazy and it is run by a bunch of assholes and it is sort of, maybe deteriorating like Rome did, like some may say, I still think it is the best shot at living the most free life out of all the countries available, as far as I can tell. But it's not going to stay that forever, obviously. It's going to take many, many people over many, many years and many, many fights, intellectually, not violently, I pray. Revolution, war is not something I fantasize about or take lightly or call for or want by any means. That is literally man-made horrors beyond your comprehension, and nobody should ever want that, and we should avoid that at all costs, but not the cost of dangerous freedom. That's the line, right? You can't cross over that and to say, oh, to avoid war, to avoid fighting, to avoid all this stuff, fine, I will accept peaceful slavery. At that point, you might as well be dead. If you are stripped of your natural rights, your God-given rights that make you a human being, a peaceful slave is simply a walking corpse. You're worth nothing. There's nothing to you as a person. You have sacrificed everything. You've had everything stripped of you. Your life is meaningless at that point. Dangerous freedom, or just freedom, we'll just call it for that matter, is never to be used as a bargaining chip. It should never be used to trade for comfort. It should never be used to, make peace with the situation. It is something that has to be preserved at all costs, which is why I'm so thankful for it. And why I'm so thankful to be in this excellent country, because there is still more of it here than everywhere else, it seems. It is slipping, and it's important to call that out, but it's also important to realize that there is still more of it here than anywhere else. And I bring this up at Thanksgiving, obviously, because I'm going to go over to my parents' place now, and I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to have I'm going to have to listen to some really terrible political takes on both sides, obviously. The table's pretty divided. My parents, very far right. My grandparents, very far right as well. Certain members of my mom's family are very far left. Some center left. Some center right. Not a single one of them considers himself to be an anarchist and hates them all together and thinks that they're all one evil fucking pedophilic lizard party. And so when I start making some of the rather spicier comments about politicians, government, voting, somehow I become the devil for everybody to go at. So preparing myself to go to war with that. I am thankful for that, by the way, to be able to have such free-flowing conversations, to be able to say exactly what we want to say, even if it does degenerate into yelling like it does for most people. But I am thankful for that. But I bring this up because the mass shootings, again, I keep going back to that because it's the big topic. Guns are the big legal and political battlefield at the moment, which is interesting looking back at it. They have been for a while, but I feel like now with this administration, with the media heads that are at play at the news agencies, at social media companies, guns are the big target item. And I'm not really seeing much done from either side to preserve the rights, to be completely honest with you. There's not many valid talking points being made within the government. It comes from agencies without the government, GOA, FPC, fighting like hell for our rights in a convoluted bureaucratic system designed only for judges and lawyers to understand. So very thankful for them too, actually. As more manifestos come out, as more reasons for these shootings are released, that are recorded by the shooters, it's used more in an oxymoronic fashion, similar to peaceful slavery, to justify the push to remove them. And you can jump on Twitter and see any fucking stupid account calling for, gun control or guns to be banned and all this bullshit. And similar to, like all the things, peaceful slavery, critical race theory, gender theory, climate theory, they exist for this good thing, this awesome promise that, if we get rid of guns, if we ban guns, there'll be no shootings. And again, ignoring science, common sense, our collective understanding of human behavior and history, it simply won't work. You can look anywhere else in the world. Well, they can say, well, no one else in the world has this problem. Yeah, no one else in the world has as many guns as we do, as, among, the private citizens. And you can say it's a good thing or a bad thing. But I'll tell you, look at the UK, who has more stabbings as a percentage of their population than we do shootings. And considering how small of a country they are, that's oddly coincidental. No, not coincidental. That's a strange little statistic. I think we'll just leave it at that. Also considering that stabbings are illegal, that knives are illegal. Teaspoons, you need to have a permit for those too, I'm pretty sure. That better. I don't know if it's a joke, but you get where I'm going. It doesn't matter. If people want to kill somebody, rob somebody, violate somebody, they already don't give a shit about the rules. There's already rules for that. If murder is already illegal, why the fuck do you think taking away or saying they can't have a gun is going to make any fucking difference? If they want one, they're going to get one. That's how it's always fucking worked. But these people, again, live in fantasy land. They're so obsessed with the promise of peaceful slavery and comfort that they're willing to just give up anything, even though they don't have any guns themselves. They're willing to give up other people's guns for their own comfort. And bringing that point home, actually, there is a local gun buyback that's going to be popping up near me. And obviously, Brandon Herrera just went to his and tried to save some guns. And since private sales are legal in this state, you better believe I'm going to be there with a couple buddies. And we are going to be offering a more financially beneficial way for responsible citizens to turn over their guns. And here's a really funny thing. So the county announced that they set aside $10,000 for this gun buyback program. And all of a sudden, that $10,000 turned into a non-descriptive or non-finite amount of Meijer and Target gift cards. They're not going to give you cash. They're going to give you gift cards. And they don't say how many gift cards they have. I'm going to guess it's a lot less than $10,000, the $10,000 that was set aside. And if you follow the guidance of any banks or the government itself, anyone calling you or offering you gift cards in exchange for anything is typically a scam. No. Do what you will with that. We're going to be there with cold hard cash, check, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, whatever people want. We're going to be paying the exact same prices the state's going to be paying for their weapons. But we're going to give them real cash. And they can shop with their money, do whatever they want. They can put that in their pocket. They can take it right to the bank. It's just a better way for people who want to do that. At the same time, I also propose it's a more equitable and sustainable solution because, well, the state is most likely just going to melt those down, which is terrible for the environment, by the way. We are going to make sure they stay out of the hands of bad people while preserving the environment. So yeah, I think it's a pretty easy pitch. And if you're following me on Instagram, you would have seen the flag or the little table runner that I made for the buyback event we're going to be crashing. So I'm going to try to record that. I'm trying to make an episode out of it. I think it's going to be pretty hilarious. I think we're going to get thrown out in about 0.2 seconds. But any guns that we can keep out of the hands of the state and in the hands of responsible gun owners, dirty civilians, good people who know what they're doing and can operate them safely. Or if they want to turn them in and make even more money off of them, that's still better than turning them into the fucking government. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm thankful for that event, honestly, as stupid as that sounds. Very much looking forward to having some fun, hanging out with some good guys and doing that. I forgot even where I was, honestly, before I got sidetracked by the gun buyback thing. Again, I have serious hangover and gym brain right now. I'm pretty fried. But yeah, maybe, you're probably going to listen to this after Thanksgiving, honestly, because I'm not going to get to editing this before, or after dinner tonight. So think back on what you're really thankful for. Be appreciative of the dangerous freedoms that you have left. Live spitefully for the peaceful slavery that is forced upon you, and don't let that line cross. Fight as much as you can within the bounds and the means available to you. Because again, we don't want violent conflict. We don't want violent, clashing. But get active. Spend your money accordingly. Are you spending your money at or with companies that promote dangerous freedoms? Are you subscribed to, FPC? Are you, supporting the individuals who are really fighting and trying to do good by you and your dangerous freedoms? And I think that's really what I'm going to leave it with. I think that dangerous freedom versus peaceful slavery idea, that vision, is helpful. And I got to pick up some Jefferson sometime. I think it's just, he's got some fucking awesome one-liners. So I'm going to get on that as well. But I'm thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for this whole adventure I've been on in starting this whole thing. I know it's still very small. I don't care. It's, it's a passion project of mine. I'm learning. I'm growing. I ask for patience. Continue sending me that feedback. I appreciate the love. And stay metal. Have a good Thanksgiving.